Yo, what's good guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be showing you how to make an emotional or kind of moody or sexy R&B sample for somebody like Drake, Bryson or Party Next Door. The sample I'm going to be breaking down is from my most recent sample pack, Spirit Volume 2. This pack has 20 melodic R&B-ish samples similar to this one with 20 bonus midis as well. So I'll go ahead and leave a link down in the description for that if you're interested. But anyways, as usual, I'm going to break down everything I did to make this sample, so hopefully you can learn something or take something away. This one's a little bit more unique than the usual dark stuff that I make. Like I said, it's R&B-ish or trap soul, you know, whatever you want to call it. It's very moody, like wavy, ambient, emotional, just kind of, you know, sets the mood. But anyway, don't forget to subscribe and let's get right into it. Alright, so as you can see, I got the final sample pulled up. We're sitting at 89 BPM and the final sample is D major. And as you can see, I pitched it down 4 semitones at the end. So everything we're going to be making, looking at that went into making the sample is going to be in F sharp major. And I don't usually use the major scale. Almost everything I make is in the minor scale, but for R&B or trap soul or anything like that, a lot of it is actually in the major scale. I mean, you could use minor. A lot of it's in minor too, but just went with the major scale for this one. Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and play the sample so you can hear how it sounds, and then I'll get right into how I made it. Yeah, as you can hear, very emotional, very moody, very sexy. Definitely sets a mood, and that's what we're going for, because we're going for that R&B Drake vibe. So yeah, like I said, this is for somebody like Drake, Bryson Party Next Door. As for the sounds, I just have a piano, a sub bass, I have a bell, a whirly, and then I have some drums in the background, and then vocals, and then that's it. So yeah, I'm gonna go through and just break down everything I did to make this sample, so let's get right into it. Alright, so the first thing that I did when I started the sample is I obviously put the BPM to 89. For R&B, a lot of the times it's like anywhere from a high 70 BPM to like 95 BPM. But of course, you can always make it in the trap soul range, where it's more in like a trap BPM, like 130 all the way up to like 160 or 170 BPM. But anyway, I set this to 89 BPM and I pulled up this whirly. I selected the amped phase preset and I just laid down this simple chord progression. So like I said, we're in F sharp major, and I didn't want to start on the root note. So what I did is I laid down this chord right here, and then all I did is I took the top note, duplicated it, and pitched it down an octave. That kind of just creates tension. Another thing that I did to create some tension with this chord progression is I let the note Another thing that I did to create some tension with this chord progression is I let the notes kind of drag on for a long time. So when I play it, you'll hear the chord kind of goes on for a long time, and then same thing here, and then it just has another chord at the very end to kind of break that tension, and then right back into it, and it just repeats. And another thing that I did is I went ahead and I selected everything, and then I hit Alt S and strum the notes so that it just feels a little bit more realistic. I recommend hitting this alternate direction when you strum, so it's not the same exact strum for every single chord. It kind of defeats the purpose. It doesn't sound realistic, because when you're playing chords on a keyboard, you're not going to be strumming the same exact way every single time. So just a little tip. For effects, I just added EQ to EQ out pretty much everything. I EQ'd out the lows, the highs, and then I took out a lot of the harsh frequencies. I added this plugin Ambience. It adds a lot of reverb and delay, and then I added a bit of a compressor to it. And so with all the effects, it sounds like this. Alright, so the next thing that I did is I found this one-shot bell from a Bass 1 and Pilgrim one-shot. It's a pretty simple bell. I made sure to set it up with the attack a little bit higher, hold all the way up, and then the release up a little bit, make sure it's cutting itself. Basically what I did is I just took the same exact chord progression that I came up with for this, and I copied it over to the bell and then just shortened it up because the bell had a lot of tail to it. So I just copied that over, pitched it down, and so I added again EQ, where I EQ'd out pretty much everything, EQ'd out a lot of the harsh frequencies. I added this Kramer tape stereo for some wobble. I added Echo Boy with this preset for some delay. I added this preset from Valhalla Ubermod, kind of like it's a unique reverb. Added a little bit of halftime tremolator, some more EQ to take out more harsh frequencies, and then another EQ to take out even more harsh frequencies. And so with all the effects, it sounds pretty much completely differently. So I'll go ahead and play it. Yeah, really moody, really ambient. Okay, so the next thing that I did is I pulled up a piano. I pulled up this wire contact bank from Contact, and I used the In Concert preset. So what I did is I copied over the same chord progression again to the piano, so that's this part right here. And then I added a bass pattern to the piano, and then I added some notes in between the same chord progression, kind of make this piano stand out a little bit more. I wanted it to fit with the other sounds. So I brought the same chord progression over, but I didn't want it to be the exact same thing as the other two, the bell and the whirly. So that's why I added a little bit of variation and the bass line to make it stand out. And then for effects, I just added an EQ to take out almost all the lows, and then a big dip towards the high mids and the highs. And then I added sketch cassette for some saturation and compression, and also a little bit of wobble to make it sound more vintage. Some reverb, and I did have delay, but I think I took it off. So with all the effects, it sounds like this. And then once I had all that laid out, the next thing that I did is I found a vocal from Arcade. So it's this bank right here. Like I said, we're in F sharp major. For the effects, I added a little bit of fresh air. This plugin is good for vocals, and it's also good for, I usually put it on the master. It just kind of brings out the high mids and the highs and makes everything sound a little bit more bright. And then I used Little Alter Boy. I turned this formant knob down a little bit, and what that does is it keeps the same pitch, but it makes it sound a little bit lower. Added some delay, some reverb, a filter to kind of make it sound more muffled and in the background, tremolator, and I made it go back and forth with this Pan Man preset. So with all the effects, it sounds like this. Alright, so the next thing that I did is a little bit unique. I wanted to add a drum break kind of just in the background, make it sound like an old vintage sample, but I couldn't find any really good drum breaks that I wanted to use, so I just made my own. I forgot where I found these drum one-shots, but it's just a kick, a snare, a ride, a hi-hat, and a crash. And I just literally laid out my own pattern, like as if you're making a beat. But I knew that I didn't want to make a beat, obviously. I just wanted to have it in the background. So I linked it all to the same mixer channel, and I added an EQ where I took out almost all the lows and all the highs so that just the mids were left, because without it, it would be too much. I wanted it like way in the background. And then I added a little bit of distortion with Decapitator, some reverb, and then a filter to take out more of the highs and more of the lows. And so this is what it sounds like all together. Yeah, like I said, just really like way in the background just to add more texture, make it sound more vintage. And the last thing that I did is I added a bass and just followed the root note of the chord progression. I just used this one shot right here, the hold all the way up, everything else all the way down, make sure it's cutting itself. And then I just added a little bit of distortion to it, and so this is what it sounds like just following the root note. Alright, so once I had all the sounds that I knew I wanted to put in the sample, I just structured it out. So for this sample, I just put the vocals at the beginning with everything else. And then when the vocals drop out, the piano comes in. And then for the third part, I just don't have the piano or the vocals, and it's just the really ambient part with the whirly and the bell, with the sub bass and drums going throughout the whole sample. And then as always, I put the stems afterwards so that whoever's using it can use whatever section they want, however they want to do it, however they want to chop it up. I rendered it out as an audio file, and then I brought it back into FL Studio, and like I said before, I pitched it down 4 semitones. So we were in F sharp major, I pitched it down to D major. When I did that, I had to do the same thing with the bass, so I took that and went down 4 semitones. So I pitched it down a few semitones to make it fit the key, same thing I did with the sample. And then because it was so low, I just pitched it up 1 octave so you can hear it. And then with the actual melody itself, I put it to mixer track 10, and I took out a lot of the lows and boosted some of the highs, added some more fresh air to boost even more of the high mids and the highs. And then I added this vintage tape plugin to give it more color and more character. That's pretty much it for the sample. That's how I approach making kind of like an R&B sample for somebody like Drake. Hopefully you learned something new. I think that this tutorial is a little bit more unique than some of the other dark samples that I make. Like I said, I'll leave a link down in the description for the Spirit Volume 2 pack with 20 samples just like this and 20 bonus midis. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.